In the next presentation, Andrea Tosatto from Open-Xchange will actually do a sort of comparison between Kubernetes and Ansible, which is something that was in the previous presentation too. They decided not to go to Kubernetes and choose Ansible instead. And I see his presentation yesterday in Milan, and I think that there's something to look at.
Yeah. Hello. So, hi. I mean, it's kind of strange actually, to be honest, to talk in English when most of the people are Italian, but someone is still speaking English, I guess. So I will just stick with the English, unless someone really doesn't like it, but yeah. So, thank you for
Let's say that is for the video.
Yeah, perfect. For the people at home. Yeah, great. So, brilliant. So this presentation is really about Kubernetes for the Ansible users. The idea of this talk really came from the fact that I work for a company that invested for 2-3 years a lot in automation based in Ansible. And the kind of thing really that happened when we were investing so much in Ansible is seeing the rest of the community completely shifting toward containerization, Kubernetes orchestration, taking really a kind of radically different approach to the one that we were taking with the product and with our technical decision. Therefore, I really felt like this single person there, talking about Ansible to a crowd that is talking about Kubernetes. And we went through a process in which we really questioned our technical decisions and we kind of tried to figure out whether really Kubernetes was making sense for us. And I got inspired by a book actually this Christmas that is called The Wisdom of Crowds, which is essentially a book that is trying to push this idea that if a community picks a technology and multiple individuals together agree to do something, maybe this is because it's a concept that is stronger than the one of the individual trying to do in another way around. So this talk is really to kind of introduce you to why we decided to look at Ansible and actually how Ansible can be a very good investment already moving towards containerization and Kubernetes. I work for an open source company. The company is called PowerDNS. It's part of Open-Xchange, which is a bigger, larger open source company as well. I work more not on the core DNS source code. I work on a lot of tooling and extension that live around and that together make our product for the carrier. But I really come from a niche market, which is the DNS market, which I wasn't expecting to fall in love, but is the one I'm still in after 3 years. Okay. So what we will be talking about today is really exploring what, for me personally, are the 3 main motivations that I gave myself and as a company we decided to adopt and think about and develop as why Kubernetes and what is Kubernetes. The second aspect really that I will try to go through, we don't have that much time in the presentation, but at least I will try to give you a quick overview of it, is 3 aspects where I think Kubernetes, actually Ansible is still very much relevant in the Kubernetes environment, and in particular this is regarding the implementation, migration of existing services and lifecycle management. Okay? And then I hope I will manage to leave some time for the questions. We don't have that much time. So let's start immediately with why and what. So we are a software company, so we don't run a software as a service solution, we don't run a platform as a service solution. What we deliver to our customer is a solution that is made by software that they need to operate. Okay? So the end user of whatever we develop and deliver is not us, it's other people. And this is fundamental because also looking back at what Christina was talking about, we are not the community that is using the software. The community is outside us. We are an upstream first open source project. We don't operate it. Actually, we do it, but for sure, at a small, talking about DNS at a smaller scale than the one of our users. Okay, and what we experience working with the user is that with Ansible as an automation tool, it's very, very hard to decouple development and operation. Because who is responsible of writing in a configuration management tool the configuration of a software and maintaining it through all the release life cycle of the software, all the breaking changes, developers, operations. What we found out that really is very, very, very strong of Kubernetes and very important is that you standardize on an API. This is like, for the operation team, delivering and maintaining a Kubernetes cluster is a way to deliver an API that the developer can operate with, interact with infrastructure, and have full control of all the lifecycle of the application, okay? I think in the IT community we found very creative solution to this problem, like continuous delivery and continuous integration, but these are not the final solution to the problem, okay? There is a big gray area in between that is what Kubernetes is trying to shorter, to make smaller. The second thing that we really like of Kubernetes is the fact that it's really like kind of creating an higher level abstraction on the infrastructure. When we talk about infrastructure as a service, we talk about server, we talk about network, but we really don't have an abstraction on what is the configuration of what is running in a server, okay? And this is, if you think about like all this success of Lambda and function as a service, like these are so popular because they make trivial for people to deploy, to put live application and software. And we believe that the language of Kubernetes, the fact that you abstract everything in a deployment, which is a concept that is a primitive concept like for developer, is making like Kubernetes very, 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 very much valuable, and certainly more than the abstraction you can build using Ansible as a configuration management tool, where when you open up a role, you still talk about packages, services in terms of system unit, sysctl argument, kernel tuning, and all these kind of things, which is way more complex to be understood by a normal developer and people that operate the software. The third element that we do really like of Kubernetes is the fact that Kubernetes is really coming with this principle of integrating as native component of the tool, of the infrastructure, a reconciliation loop. That is what Adriano was already explaining before. So this idea that Kubernetes takes a declarative approach, developer declare the state, they don't care of developing tools to instruct the machines to converge the state. They just declare the final state, and all the complexity is hidden behind the Kubernetes API into the convergence loop. And this is something that sometimes I feel like misunderstood here. I'm not sure if you can read it fine. But I found like a couple of days ago on LinkedIn this kind of conversation. People that really like say that Kubernetes, due to the control loop, really like encourage developer like to deploy faster and sometimes like code with less quality, poor quality. I don't think it's about it. Kubernetes is about taking a defensive approach, making sure that the service is available. Nevertheless, there will be issues with deployment. But Kubernetes is really like giving integrated into its own engine, in its own way of working, a defensive mechanism to make sure that the service is always up and running, okay? And if you look like really the concept of deployment are making, for instance, easy. The way these are coded in Kubernetes is easy to do rollback, okay? And that's something that to me is very, very important. Now, based on these three topics, I believe that if we think about the end user of an infrastructure, which are developers, people that are deploying services, okay, that needs to be available, the abstraction of Kubernetes and the way Kubernetes is built is definitely like way easier to be understood and managed than something like configuration management tool, Ansible, Puppet. They are really made for sysadmin. They are not really made for developers. But we believe, and the thing that I really want to walk you through is the fact that I believe that in an ecosystem where Ansible, a company has invested a lot in Ansible and then is shifting to Kubernetes, Kubernetes is not replacing everything. There are a lot of opportunities for Ansible to be used. And therefore this investment for really like still being worth during the next years. And the very first thing that I want you to really like look at is like how a normal infrastructure today is made end-to-end. An infrastructure today is not like only VMs and container, but there is a whole set of components that live behind this, that allow us to build the abstraction. Something that I really like of DNS is that every time we do DNS, it really pushed me to think about the silicon, because like the Melanos guys were saying, but DNS is a latency sensitive application. That means that it doesn't matter how many layers of abstraction you build. In the end, your CPU needs to support a lot, and it's a CPU bound application. Same really is for every application. And there is like the storage aspect, there is the network aspect, there is the physical machine management, there is the OpenStack, for instance, that to be orchestrated to provide and implement machine VMs on premise. But even when you are in the cloud and you consume all the lower level of the infrastructure as a service, still you need to manage the machines, still you need to install Kubernetes. And then of course there are all the things that Kubernetes is very good at implementing and managing, which is what is living on the top. And really, if we look at Kubernetes, Kubernetes in the end is really like taking care of the upper layer. And it's taking care of, like, sometimes in some deployment tools, self-managing himself in a very similar fashion to TripleO in OpenStack, and in particular I'm referring to Bootkube and the Cluster API working stream that are happening in the Kubernetes community. But at the moment, really, Kubernetes is very good at taking care of the container engine and of the application, but it's not so great yet at managing the lower element of the infrastructure. Actually, it's not in the scope. And if you look at OpenShift, for instance, in OpenShift, OpenShift is really like Red Hat is really investing a lot in making Kubernetes mostly self-managed. So OpenShift has some operators also to manage the lower level, like the VM. Okay, and if you deploy Kubernetes on the cloud, you can also like trigger auto-scaling of VM on AWS or whatever. But it's just it. But if you want to run it like on-premise, what really Ansible is good at and has functionality integrated is to manage a bigger portion of the stack, the storage, the network, the physical host, the VM themselves as well, where you then install Kubernetes. And together with the container engine, of course. So definitely, if you look at like from the point of view of a company investing in automation, even in a Kubernetes environment, Ansible still makes sense to manage all the elements, all the things that are not managed by Kubernetes. Something will have to deploy, okay? And the other thing is really that these two are complementary, okay, in the end, because they work at different level. And while Kubernetes is your platform as a service, I still believe that it works to invest in automation with tools like Ansible to manage and make sure like to have a fully version control infrastructure for all the rest of the story of the part. Another part where really I find Ansible being very, very valuable for a tool is that scenario in which you already have like your infrastructure automated, you already have your continuous delivery pipeline integrated, you already have most of the tools in Ansible, and you need to migrate to Kubernetes. And really like what happened, and actually this is true story, it's something that we really, are experiencing also with the people we work with. In the moment in which the operation team finally managed to get rid of all the legacy infrastructure, fully put under control in a way or another, under version control with automation, most of the infrastructure, you have developers on the other side that really ask for more, for Kubernetes, something like Kubernetes, they want to be independent. And in this journey, really what I think that makes sense is really like Kubernetes, Ansible, because really like here, Ansible, like if you look at tool like Kubesprite, like I know is not the most brilliant deployment solution in Kubernetes, but is what is used, is one of the options. It's not maybe perfect, but allows like the operation team not to change their tool chain, still use Ansible also to deploy the Kubernetes cluster, while the application team takes care of containerizing the service, okay? And this is really like a journey they can do together. Like we know very often that for some application, containerizing the application is not trivial, okay? And yesterday in Milan there were some people from Sky talking about their services. I can tell you that containerizing their DNS is not a trivial task due to the network, okay? And there is not much benefit, right, running a DNS in a container when then you touch it in NetHost. It's like a static binary, so you can put it everywhere by container, okay? The next step really of the journey is really like in the moment in which like you finally have this Kubernetes, you have this application that is containerized, and really, but still you have like your existing pipeline or the existing tool to deploy the application. And here, what I think that is very, very nice of Ansible is that Ansible has a very good support for Kubernetes. In a situation in which you are in between in a migration, Ansible gives you a way to essentially the existing role that were doing things, installing packaging, doing things manually on the servers. Now you can rewrite the existing role without changing your playbook, just to making them talk to the Kubernetes API. And if you use, for instance, like Ansible as part of your continuous delivery pipeline, essentially what you change the runtime without changing the interface, essentially the Ansible playbook to do the deployment. And this thing is very much important in all the scenarios where, for instance, tools like Ansible Tower have been implemented, which is something that a lot of companies have done in order to abstract Ansible with API. So you can still use Ansible, but essentially now, instead of installing the application on the server, you run it like using the Kubernetes modules in Ansible, you run it on Kubernetes. And of course, like, this is not the end, because really it's important in a company for the separation of concern and responsibility that Kubernetes is enabling really to put finally at the end of the journey developer in control. And this is what happened as a last step. So of course you can get rid of Ansible to manage like the deployment of the application. You can adopt all the native tools. There are plenty of native tools, all the native Jenkins apps, for instance, all the native tools that allow you to deploy application on Kubernetes. And here, at the end of this journey, where I think that Ansible can take in some environment an important role, really here, just as a last step, you really achieve this final separation of concern. Another thing to consider is for people that are not starting like from scratch with Kubernetes, but are migrating legacy application to Kubernetes. One other thing to consider is the fact that lifecycle management of application, even with Kubernetes, is not obvious, okay? Because not all the applications are stateless. Most of the applications have some sort of state, okay? And if we really want to consolidate the infrastructure on something with like Kubernetes, we really need to take care of state management. Okay. In particular, there are applications that are really not designed to like the way Kubernetes works. So, for instance, this application requires to launch database migration manually. Or there are applications that, for instance, require like to prepare assets on disk, or all this kind of operation. Okay, and the kind of solution in the Kubernetes community for this kind of use cases, which I believe is super brilliant, is the operator pattern. The kind of marketing like claim of the operator pattern is that the operator pattern is allowing to encode the best practices of operation in something that is then triggerable and consumable via the Kubernetes API. And here, like what I believe that might be a very good opportunity for this situation is the fact that, for instance, the operator SDK from Red Hat support natively Ansible operator. That means that essentially, like people, operation team that have their experience already with Ansible don't have to learn a new programming language, Golang, Node.js, Python, okay, to implement this operator. Because the operator's SDK is essentially giving you like a framework in which you can hook to the control loop of Kubernetes, your Ansible playbook, and your Ansible playbook that are something that generally ops people are able to manage because it's closer to the shell script that traditionally are used to manage the infrastructure, you can use in order to manage all the state transition, in order to encode all these special cases, situation and operation that are required in order to do safe rolling update and upgrade of the software. Okay? And the good thing of the operator SDK is that the operator SDK is defining the custom resource definition together with the operator itself that is running. So all this experience now is fully like consumable by developers in terms of via the Kubernetes API via a custom resource definition. Okay? Which I believe is a very good solution. Especially because of the learning curve of Kubernetes, this is making easier to start the operator journey. So to sum up, like I think Ansible, this is what I hope that will happen because I invested like a lot of time in it, also in Kubernetes, but yeah. I hope that Ansible will really I think it will still play a key role in the management of server and infrastructure. So for the people that invested in Ansible and automation in general, Kubernetes is not going to replace everything. The most important thing to me to understand to make you understand is that you don't really have to use Kubernetes. So it's not that if you don't use Kubernetes you're not cool, okay, or you're going to be bankrupt as a company, okay. But one of the things that I really want you to think of, if you are in between, not yet fully convinced, is really think about the use case, the potential. And what I strongly believe is that eventually you might end up doing it, okay? I want to close with a final slide from Tosatto, which for me is very relevant, specifically for OpenStack, that really kind of suffered a little bit from this Kubernetes thing, especially at the very beginning. Like, to be cloud native, you don't need Kubernetes, okay? He's saying essentially that 95% of the cloud native things that, were already possible, like with VMs. And Kubernetes is just like giving one more level of abstraction on top of that, okay? Thank you.